Hey there, people. It's Peter, aka Hacking This and That, back again with a follow-up video on sensors and helium console. So, uh, if you haven't watched the first video, I'll drop a link in the comments section or in the description below. It's important you're going to want to watch that. We're going to get into some configuration options both on the console itself, but also on the device. So, what can we do with our devices that might optimize our installation? These particular devices defaultly configured to send a uplink every 20 minutes. I have since changed that to 5-minute intervals, uh, maybe 10. I've changed it. I don't remember what I changed it to last. Um, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I also want to briefly dive back into profiles. We're going to introduce ADR, or adaptive data rate. I'm also going to introduce the packet multi-buy option and there was something else. Oh, configuring spread factor. Configuring adaptive rate on your device. So let's start with the reporting interval. Now, before I dig into how to do it on DataCake, I'm going to tell you that I broke my integration with DataCake. So this isn't going to work. It's going to fail. I'm going to show you how to tell that it's failed. I'm also going to show you how to do it by hand in console if this ever does happen to you, because I think understanding the how is just as important in console. So let me flip over to DataCake here for a moment. DataCake's a great platform because it does give you, based on the device profiles, some downlink templates already made for you. You can create and add your own, check with the documentation on DataCake and your device to make sure you're setting that properly. You'll notice one of the options here is the 5-minute reporting interval, which is fabulous. But how often do you really need to sample your temperature? Business application may vary from person to person, but it's my opinion that 3 to 4 samples per hour are probably sufficient for any application. So I'm going to change this back to a 20-minute reporting interval because I'm burning through some DC pretty fast right now. The other option is, in DataCake is the configure and send downlink. So right now, DataCake thinks I have it set for 10. I'm going to tell it to set it to 20, and I'm going to say save measurement and send downlink. That simple. You even get a little toaster right in the corner here that says it's working. But however, I can go over to debug, and my debug log shows downlink token invalid for integration. Not sure how I'd managed to do that. Tear it down, set it up, tear it down enough times, apparently you break things. So I'm going to jump back over to console. I'm going to go into my device, and I'm going to introduce you to the downlink window, which is this little blue cloud over here on the right. That'll pop open, and we are going to be looking for a payload, but we've got a couple options to figure. So what is our payload? If we go look at our documentation for this device, you will notice that the downlink command is sent as a 3-byte hex. The important thing here is that key 01 that tells it sort of what register on the sensor we are storing this payload in. And hypothetically, if we wanted a 60-second transmit interval, we would enter a payload of 3C. Now, further in this documentation, pretty sure you'll find it say 5-minute interval minimum. I think that's reasonable. Why they use an example of 60-second, I think, is just a matter of copy and paste from some other device. So, in order to create our payload, I'm going to grab this string because I believe copy and paste reduces errors. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to paste that in there. Now, that's the wrong value. We know that. The right value, I'm going to grab a trusty hex calculator here, and 20-minute, that would be 6 600? No, 6,000. No. Wow. Math, work, brain. 60 seconds, 10 would be 12,000. And nope, my math is way off. 1,200. You'd think it was late at night and I'd had too much to drink. All right, so 4B0 is our 20-minute reporting interval. I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to replace the last 3 characters. And I didn't do that right. So I switch back and forth between Macs and PCs, and the keyboard shortcuts often are right beside each other. Anyway, so we have our payload value. Now we need to just want to double check something. Yeah, I did that wrong. Okay. This is where copy and paste for the win. I left a 0 in there that I shouldn't have left in. We need 4B0, 4B0. Okay, that looks better. Now, scheduling. As part of the communication protocol between sensors and the network, there is a window of opportunity, 2 windows of opportunity for communicating to the device. A Class A device predominantly will transmit, very rarely receive, but it will give you 2 windows after each uplink to send a payload down to the device. This is what the schedule first, schedule last. So after the uplink, you have a downlink window for 1 second. There's a pause, and then there's a second downlink window, and you need to queue up which window you want to send that in. The other settings, I just leave as default. I haven't dug into them. They haven't interfered with me. So if you want to dig into them, feel free. Regional, I think, is pretty obvious. If you're in a region where, you're dealing with a device with multiple regions, you may need to specify that you're currently in US 915 or EU 868 for your downlink. The other option over here is the base 64 or text. We are sending text because I don't want to do the base 64 conversion. Why should I? I can have the computer do it for me. And I click to queue up my payload. There's my base 64 payload, already ready. So we have a downlink queued. I'm going to activate my device. I should see an uplink event, a downlink event. Now, my queue hasn't cleared. I can refresh, it's not cleared, because I wanted the confirmation response. So rather than waiting 20 minutes, I'm going to activate the device again. Send another uplink. And now my queue is cleared. So I have successfully sent a downlink to this device telling it to transmit on a 20-minute interval rather than the 5 or 10 that I had adjusted it to. This will reduce your DC burn. It's up to you to decide what's the right interval depending on your device. What else can you do to optimize your installation? So I said we were going to dig into profiles. In the first video, we talked about CF enabled. The other one I want to talk about is ADR and the adaptive data rate. So they've just, to my observation, updated some of the description on here to say recommended for stationary devices, right there in the title. So, when do you use this? When you're dealing with stationary devices and you have a device that is ADR compliant or ADR compatible. So, if you're setting up a GPS tracking unit, do not enable ADR. It's not going to help. If you have a stationary device that is ADR enabled, you can allow ADR. What does this do? It allows the device and the network to negotiate what the spread factor can be for this device to transmit on. That will help reduce battery wear. So when you see a device that says it's good for up to 10 years, there's a couple of things that are factored into that. The first is the spread factor that it's transmitting on. The second is the reporting interval. Those can significantly impact your battery life expectancy. So if you're looking for a device that you can leave alone for a long period of time, make sure you're optimizing your data rate. So I already have a profile that I have enabled on these devices. I'm going to modify, no, actually I'm going to create a new profile. I'm going to enable both the CF list and the ADR. So I'm going to create new. We're going to do ADR plus CF. I'm going to turn them both on. Now I'm going to pause for a moment here and acknowledge this third option in here, and that is the set delay before receive one window. So I talked about that uplink and then downlink timing. That is in some devices configurable. I am going to say best option, leave it alone, unless you're building your own device and you have a reason for adjusting those windows. The protocols are often very suggestive rather than prescriptive, as in they will tell you what should be done, but it's not how it has to be done. So when in doubt, leave it alone, go with the defaults. So create profile. Now I need to modify that profile. I'm going to do it from my flows tab. I'm going to go into my group. I'm going to go to my profile, and I'm going to turn that on. You'll notice that it turned the other one off because you can only have a single profile applied to a device or a group of devices at one time. Now, while we're here, and you'll see, I'm going to sort of prelude this. The fourth option that we haven't talked about yet is packets. So, GPS tracking devices. The single point of communication is probably sufficient for some applications, but if you're looking for helium coverage mapping, you're going to want to get into some packet configuration. So we'll go over to packets and create a new packet config. I'm going to call this Multibuy. So what do I mean by multi-buy? I may cover this in the first video. I can't remember at this point, so I'm going to cover it again, especially if you're trying to set up a GPS tracker. So the typical device will use a single hotspot for communication. A mapper may want to cover, a mapper, when you want it to cover helium coverage, may need to buy multiple packets. You may have 10 hotspots that all cover where you are at that time. Good representation of coverage would be to buy all those packets. This is where you can also burn up DC pretty fast, so be careful with what you set this to. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to say I want 10 packet buy. So every time this thing sends out a beacon that says, here's my coordinates, this is my speed. If 10 hotspots hear it, 10 hotspots will earn DC for handling that packet. And it comes out of your DC bucket. So use it with caution, just so you know what that is. Preferred hotspots. Obviously, if you're setting up a mapping, don't do preferred hotspots. This is supposed to do preferential buying. I haven't worked with it. I'm not a fan of it. I think it confuses people, and I just want to leave it at that for now. I'm sure that feature will be enhanced in the near future, and we can discuss it then. So I'm going to save that profile. I'm going to go back to my flow. I'm going to go back to my group. I'm going to go to packet, and I'm going to enable multi-buy. You're saying, Peter, why are you turning on multi-buy on a temperature sensor? Just to show you guys how it works. So if I come back to my devices, I open up my device, and hopefully my neighbor's hotspots are set up well enough to get this from my office in my basement. So activate, and we should see, there we go, 2 hotspots. And just give it a little better chance to try to work. Can I get it? Nope, there we go, 1, 2. You saw it count up. So that's multi-buy working. Like I said, in most applications, you may not need it. Maybe you're trying to just give yourself a little more redundancy in your data. Again, it all depends on your application. I want to show you the hows, you decide the whys, and that is essentially configuring your devices. The thing I want to circle back on briefly before we wrap up is the adaptive data rate. So you want to make sure your device is adaptive data rate enabled. If I look briefly at the documentation for the LHT65s, I do know that they are, but if I do oh, there we go. Look at that, I was searching for it earlier. So that's the AT command to set the data rate. Again, all I need is it to be on. It can negotiate with the network. The fact that I have options here often has to do with other networks. So double check your documentation, make sure that it's just on. That should be all you need for that application. All right. Come back over here for a brief moment. My data cake integration, again, I haven't had my probe temperature in, but all of my data should be coming through, no problem. It's getting a little warm in here. I think probably from handling this so much, I've skewed my temperatures a little. But I showed you where the downlink is. Didn't show you it working. Sorry. Showed you how to debug. Yay. We've done manual downlinks. We've done profiles. We've done packets. That's pretty much it, unless we get into some of the admin things, which I'll do in a different video. But for now, that's what I wanted to go over with you guys. So this is the end of this video. I'm pretty sure. I think so. I'm confident. We're getting close. But I want to keep the conversation going. So if you have a project you're working on, you have some questions, concerns, trouble with data cake, I'm not an expert. But console, definitely comfortable with that. I can walk you through, give you a hand. I can also point you at some other integrations. I do want to briefly give a shout out to Falcon Punch on Discord. He is looking to do a meetup in the Boston area. So if you are in the Boston area, you're interested in IoT, you're interested in talking about sensors and devices on the Helium network, Look him up. Tell him I mentioned. He'll probably hate me for it, but he's really excited about helium projects and wants to get a in-person meetup going. Probably a great opportunity just to get out of the house, go to the bar, talk IoT with some people, have a beer or two or beverage of your choice. So definitely look him up. Falcon Punch on Discord in the Boston area. The other item is I leave my DMs open, so feel free anytime. Hit me up if you got questions. Even if you're looking for some help troubleshooting, I do use a lot of Dragino stuff, but I'm not an engineer for Dragino. But I do know how to get a hold of them. So if you have questions, I'm always open for questions. Just hit me up. So this has been Peter, aka Hacking This and That. Find me on Discord. Find me on Twitter occasionally. But best of luck with your projects.